Welcome to the D.E.A.D podcast, where I discuss all things spooky and weird. I'm Desi, and today I'll be talking about Friday the 13th. Let's get started. Surprise, surprise! Hey everyone! Happy Friday the 13th! So today, in case y'all haven't guessed it, is a bonus episode for y'all. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pull this off or not, but I busted my ass and I made it happen. I hope y'all enjoy it, and I just thought it would be fun to do a little episode and to put that together for y'all. And so today I am drinking. Remember I talked about last week or earlier this week that I have the little bottles of liquor in my fridge that I need to drink. So another one of those. This is called Western Sun watermelon flavored vodka. And I had some lemonade sitting in my fridge that I had made the other day. So I need to drink that. That might be good with the watermelon vodka. And I have a new spooky glass. It's this really cool black wine glass, and it has a skeleton hand that's wrapped around the bottom of the wine glass. I'll post a picture, obviously, but it's so cool. I decided to drink it out of that because I don't have wine right now. So that's what I'm drinking out of. And for tonight and this special episode, I am wearing, of course, a Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees Camp Crystal Lake t-shirt. It has Jason Voorhees hockey mask in blood red on the front. It even has like little splatters on the side. At the bottom it says Camp Crystal Lake, and at the top it says Friday the 13th, which I will also post a picture of. So I wore that just for tonight, just for this episode. And so, yeah, let's get started. So Friday the 13th is always thought of as superstitious, bad luck, negative, or spooky, just like, walking under a ladder, crossing paths with a black cat, or breaking a mirror. Many people strongly believe that Friday the 13th brings bad luck. Although it is uncertain when this began, negative superstitions have swirled around the number 13 for centuries. This supposedly dates back to Jesus. Yeah, girl, that far back. According to biblical tradition, there were 13 guests that attended the Last Supper, the last one being Judas, who betrayed Jesus. The next day, of course, was Good Friday, the day of Jesus' crucifixion, which is why Fridays are also seen as bad luck. A mathematician at the University of Delaware, Thomas Ernstler, has claimed that Christ was crucified on Friday the 13th. Friday was also said to be the day Eve gave Adam the fateful fruit from the tree of knowledge, as well as the day Cain killed his brother Abel, the day the Temple of Solomon was toppled, and the day Noah's Ark set sail in the Great Flood. The seating arrangement at the Last Supper is believed to have created a long-standing Christian superstition that having 13 guests at a table was a bad omen. Specifically, that it was courting death. People searching for confirmation of the unluckiness of Friday the 13th may also find it is the gruesome events of the trials of the Knights of Templar. This theory became popular by Dan Brown's 2003 novel, The Da Vinci Code. The secrecy, power, and wealth of the Christian order had made it a target of the King of France in the 14th century. On Friday, October 13th, 1307, the king's agents in France arrested members of the Templar order en masse. They were charged with heresy, their prosecutors making false accusations of idol worship and obscenity, which was a complete lie because he just wanted to gain access to their money. Many were sentenced to imprisonment or burned at the stake. In Charles Panatti's book, Extraordinary Origins of Everyday Things, he traces the concept of the cursed back to Norse mythology, when Loki, god of mischief, like the Thor movies, that's funny, gatecrashed a banquet in Valhalla, bringing the number of gods in attendance to 13. Deceived by Loki, the blind god Hodur was tricked into shooting his brother Balder, the god of light, joy, and goodness, with a mistletoe-tipped arrow, killing him instantly. In pagan times, Friday was believed to have a unique association with the divine feminine. The first clue can actually be found in the weekday named Friday, which is derived from the Old English and means day of Frigg. Both Queen of Asgard, Thor again, and a powerful sky goddess in Norse mythology, Frigg, also known as Frigga, was associated with love, marriage, and motherhood. Frigg gave protection to homes, families, maintained social order, and could weave fate as she did the clouds. She also possessed the art of prophecy and could bestow or remove fertility. But, on the other hand, Freya, the goddess of love, fertility, and war, with whom Frigg was often confused with, was endowed the power to perform magic, predict the future, and determine who would die in battles, and was said to ride a chariot pulled by two black cats. So, kind of like a witch. These goddesses were worshipped widely across Europe, and because of these associations, Friday was considered a lucky day for marriage by Norse and Teutonic people. However, as Christianity gained momentum in the Middle Ages, paganism stood at odds with the new patriarchal faith. Not only did its leaders object to worshiping multiple gods and goddesses, but also the celebration of Friday, the number 13, and the goddesses who invoked love, sex, fertility, magic, and pleasure were deemed unholy. Though these goddesses were so admired that making people relinquish them proved to be a challenge, but Christian authorities were persistent with their belief, branding both the goddesses and the women who worshiped them witches. When Norse and Germanic tribes converted to Christianity, Frigga was banished in shame to a mountaintop and labeled a witch, Penaudi writes. It was believed that every Friday the spiteful goddess convened a meeting with 11 other witches, plus the devil, a gathering of 13, plotted ill turns of fate for the coming week. A practice of executing people by hanging on a Friday may have led to the day being known as Hangman's Day. Meanwhile, a line in Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, written between 1387 and 1400, alludes to the mischance that fell on a Friday. Henry Sutherland Edwards wrote in his 1869 biography about the Italian composer Gioacchino Rossini, who died on Friday the 13th. He was surrounded to the last by admiring friends, and if it be true that, like so many Italians, he regarded Fridays as an unlucky day and 13 as an unlucky number, it is remarkable that on Friday, 13th of November, he passed away. An event known as White Friday occurred in the Italian Alps in 1916. Alpini ski troops were in the Italian Alps during the First World War when Italy was fighting the Austro-Hungarian Empire. A disaster fell on the soldiers on the Italian front of World War I has become associated with Friday the 13th. On White Friday, December 13, 1916, thousands of soldiers died in the Dolomites from avalanches. On Mount Marmolada, 270 soldiers died when an avalanche struck an Austro-Hungarian base. Avalanches also struck Austro-Hungarian and Italian positions. Heavy snowfall and a sudden thaw in the Alps had created the dangerous conditions. A request to vacate the Austro-Hungarian barracks on the Grand Pose summit of Mount Marmolada by Captain Rudolf Schmid had in fact noted the danger, but it was denied. More recently, a number of traumatic events have occurred on Friday the 13th, including the German bombing of Buckingham Palace in September 1940, the murder of Kitty Genovese in Queens, New York, March 1964, a cyclone that killed more than 300,000 people in Bangladesh in November of 1970, the disappearance of a Chilean Air Force plane in the Andes in October of 1972, death of rapper Tupac Shakur, September 1996, and the crash of the Costa Concordia cruise ship off the coast of Italy, which killed 30 people in January of 2012. But Friday the 13th is not a universal superstition in some other countries. It is different days or different dates that are considered superstitious. So in Greece and Spanish-speaking countries, it is Tuesday the 13th that is considered a day of bad luck. Tuesday is considered dominated by the influence of Ares, the god of war. The fall of Constantinople to the Fourth Crusade occurred on Tuesday, April 13th, 1204. And the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans happened on Tuesday, May 29th, 1453. Events that strengthen the superstition about Tuesday. While in Italy, it is Friday the 17th that is met with fear. The origin of this belief can be traced in the writing of the number 7 in Roman numerals. By shuffling the digits of the number, you can spell vixi in Latin, meaning I have lived, implying you are currently dead, an omen of bad luck. In fact, in Italy, 13 is considered a lucky number. Now, here are some Friday the 13th statistics. A 2004 report by National Geographic included a claim a fear of traveling and conducting business on the day contributed to hundreds of millions of dollars of lost business. An estimated 17 to 21 million people in the U.S. are affected by a fear of this day, making it the most feared day and date in history. Some people are so paralyzed by fear that they avoid their normal routines in doing business, taking flights, or even getting out of bed. On June 12, 2008, the Dutch Center for Insurance Statistics stated that fewer accidents and reports of fire and theft occur when the 13th of the month falls on a Friday than on other Fridays because people are more careful or just stay home. Statistically speaking, driving is slightly safer on Friday the 13th, at least in the Netherlands. In the last 2 years, Dutch insurers received reports of an average of 7,800 traffic accidents each Friday, but the average figure when the 13th fell on a Friday was just 7,500. Friday the 13th has inspired a late 19th century secret society, an early 20th century novel, and a horror film franchise. In the late 19th century, a New Yorker named Captain William Fowler sought to remove the enduring stigma surrounding the number 13, and particularly the written rule about not having 13 guests at a dinner table, by founding an exclusive society called the 13th Club. The group dined regularly on the 13th day of the month in room 13 of the Knickerbocker Cottage, a popular watering hole Fowler owned from 1863 to 1883. Before sitting down for a 13-course dinner, members would pass beneath a ladder and a banner reading, "Those of us who are about to die salute you," in Latin. 4 former U.S. presidents, Chester Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, and Theodore Roosevelt, would join the 13 Club's ranks at one time or another. An important milestone in history of the Friday the 13th legend, in particular, not just the number 13, occurred in 1907 with the publication of the novel Friday the 13th, written by Thomas William Lawson. The book told the story of a New York City stockbroker who plays on superstitions about the date to create chaos on Wall Street and make a killing on the market. Also, the horror movie Friday the 13th, released in 1980, introduced the world to a hockey mask wearing killer named Jason, and is perhaps the best known example of the famous superstition in pop culture history. The movie spawned multiple sequels as well as comic books, novellas, video games, related merchandise, and countless terrifying Halloween costumes. Nowadays, Friday the 13th still haunts Western imagination, but with conversations around the role misogyny has played in silencing powerful women throughout history now in the mainstream, perhaps the narrative of this unlucky date and the female goddesses associated with it might soon be rewritten. The tide may already be turning. For example, Taylor Swift, whose lucky number is 13, and early on in her career would often perform with the number written on her hand. Taylor says, "I was born on the 13th. I turned 13 on Friday the 13th. My first album went gold in 13 weeks. My first number one song had a 13-second intro." She told MTV in 2009, "Every time I won an award, I've been seated in either the 13th seat, the 13th row, 13th section, or row M, which is the 13th letter in the alphabet. Basically, whenever a 13 comes up in my life, it is a good thing." With more endorsements like this, fortune rather than fear might well become the legacy of Friday the 13th. Well, guys, that is a little history of Friday the 13th, its superstition, and where it comes from. So I really enjoyed learning about it. I didn't know about the whole Taylor Swift. I knew her number, like her number was 13, but I didn't know all the little details about the number 13. That's actually pretty cool how that number keeps coming up for her. And of course, I love Friday the 13th, the scary movies. I like when it comes around because I'm like, oh, watch the movie, do whatever. So I enjoy it. But has anything ever bad happened to you on Friday the 13th? Has anything ever good happened to you on Friday the 13th? How do you feel about the day for Friday the 13th? Are you superstitious? Are you not? Let me know. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to the D.E.A.D podcast. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the D.E.A.D podcast. Also, feel free to send in your stories, episode suggestions, or feedback at the deadpodcast1@gmail.com, or send me a DM on Instagram at the D.E.A.D podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on whatever platform you are listening on, and be sure to come back next week.